guys, welcome to the first episode I've done in a while of the Valor and Virtue podcast. My husband and I used to do these a while back, and then I started doing them by myself for a while, and we moved to Texas. I tried to get back on it, did for a little bit, fell off, and then finally had a long discussion with my husband, and I want to start it back up again. I want to make it a priority, and I want to see it through and do it consistently for a long period of time. So what I want to do for this first episode is basically reintroduce myself, introduce the podcast, my background, where I'm coming from, and the goal of the podcast. So for those of you that don't know, my name is Erin. I have a wide background in health and fitness, and I'll kind of start at the beginning. But my primary sport growing up was actually competitive cheerleading. I did that for 13 plus years, went to worlds, nationals, all that good stuff. And that was kind of where I fell in love with fitness. I've always loved being competitive. I've always loved those things. And that was my first love. In high school, I also did other sports. I did track and field where I ran sprints and I pole vaulted. Then I also played soccer. And I loved all of those things. That being said, so after high school, my side job while I was going to school was coaching cheerleading. So that's my first introduction to coaching people in fitness. And I mainly coached tumbling. I did also coach itty bitties, littles, if you will, like the 3, 4, 5-year-olds, which was always fun. So like I said, I was going to school, and I was going to school to be a nurse. That was kind of my main dream. When I was little, I always said I was going to grow up and be a doctor, and I was like, just start as a nurse, get your foot in the door, and kind of go from there. And I finished all my prerequisites for nursing school, and at the time, the way that the school worked, there was a wait period. So there was like, you would finish all your prerequisites, you'd put your packet in, and then they would put you on a list, and there was a wait period for when you would get picked off that list to actually get into nursing school. And I was told that it was anywhere from like 6 months to a 2-year wait, depending on your grades and your test scores and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't really know what to do in the meantime, because I had a little scholarship and I wanted to continue with that scholarship. And it was just like a local one. I actually kind of retired from cheerleading, if you will, because I blew out both my knees 2 years apart doing 2 different things and had surgery on both of them. And I very quickly realized like that's not a sustainable thing for me to do for forever. So that's why I started coaching. I went to college. And during this wait period, I saw that they had options for some basic classes where you would still keep your credits up, so your GPA would be up for personal training. And I was like, well, I love coaching people in the cheerleading gym, so why not kind of get into this personal training thing? So I went to school for that in the meantime, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with coaching people in the community and helping people better themselves, which I think is also why I love the idea of healthcare, because I was getting to help someone in some way, shape, or form. And so in the midst of all of this, on the personal side of things, I had gotten married when I was 19 years old, 20 years old? 19, I was 19. I got married when I was 19 years old, and it ended up being a really abusive relationship. Physically, emotionally, sexually, just not good. And there were red flags beforehand that I just kind of pushed off, but things really began to blow up and true colors were shown, if you will, after we were married, and it even showed up on our wedding day after we were married. And I remember that being a really scary moment, because I was like, what just happened? Like, I just said I do to you for the rest of my life, and this particular thing is happening. So I finished the personal training stuff, but then while waiting to get into nursing school in my personal life, that began to fall apart. The marriage got really, really bad, really scary. And one day my husband at the time just left. Like, he just up and left. Got another apartment, said he was done, said the marriage was done. Come to find out later, people told me he was cheating on me, and we ended up getting a divorce when I was 21, which was a really hard thing to go through. You get married young, and everyone tells you don't do that because you're gonna, it's not gonna last. And I remember just feeling like it ended up being another statistic, and just, it was a whole snowball of things, right? That's a talk for another time. So come back to the professional side. I'd gotten divorced and I kind of went off. I traveled for a while. I lived in different states, and was getting all my personal training certifications. And eventually when I was 23, I moved back home, which at the time was in New Mexico. And I was living with my parents. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with my life. I had worked odd jobs, and I remember my mom saying, well, you should do your own thing. You should own your own thing. And I was like, well, excuse me, I wouldn't even know how to do that. I wouldn't even know how to go about doing that. I've never owned a business. I'm 23 years old. I've only ever continuously coached people through cheerleading, and for years. And I had really gotten involved in the CrossFit space, and I was like, I just don't know. And I remember she believed in me so much, and she had so much faith in me, and she had owned her own business for 23 years at that point, because she started her own business when she was pregnant with me. So she had owned her own business, and she was like, I will help you. We will come up with a 3, 5, and 10 year business plan, and we will find you a building, and we will come up, we'll ask for investors and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, I guess here we go. And at 23 years old, God opened a lot of doors for me that really rocked me. So at 23, I opened a gym all by myself. It was a 3,000 square foot warehouse that we turned into a gym. I didn't have any debt. I used all of my savings and really just threw everything I had into it. And I owned that gym for 7 years, so from 2013 to 2020. And in between there, I got married to my husband in 2015, and now we have 2 kids, a boy and a girl. They are 3 and 5. And my whole life essentially turned around. And we ended up being a CrossFit affiliate, so we were a CrossFit gym, so in a CrossFit box for 7 years, and I loved it. I loved every single part of it. We had an amazing community. We had over 100 members. I was the head trainer and the owner, and it was great. And it had its ups and downs, don't get me wrong. There were many downs, and some of my best friends and coaches can tell you there were downs. No one is perfect, and no business is perfect. But we did end up closing in 2020 for a myriad of reasons. One, my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer, and she almost died. And that was the main reason, is that I wanted to be there for my family, for her, for my dad, for my brother. It was just a really rocky, scary, uncertain time. 2, it was kind of a God thing, because then we closed the month before everything got shut down for the pandemic in the state that we were living in. Gyms did not reopen for a very, very, very long time, and many of them closed down. And I think, unfortunately, because we weren't huge, I worry that we would have closed down anyway because of the pandemic and the loss of members. And 3, I was dealing with personal issues on my own side that prevented me from being the owner and the boss and the trainer, the coach that I needed to be. I dealt with severe phobias, anxiety, panic attacks, there was an onslaught of all of that. And so all those things, we closed the gym in 2020. And then in 2021, my husband deployed for an entire year. I had a newborn, a 3-month-old, and a 2-year-old. And that was my life. My life was concerned with my children for the entire year that my husband was gone. But in the middle of 2021, I realized how much I missed training people and coaching people in that community. And I started doing it online, because that's what everybody was doing, because it was 2020, or it was after 2020. And I started coaching people online. It's something I'd never done before. I have always been an in-person coach. I've never liked the online platform. I'll never be an influencer. I'll never be someone who lives their life through social media. I believe in personal connection and personal relationships. But I do think there is power in reaching people online because of the way the world has gone since 2020. It's part of the reason that I'm doing this. And so I began to coach people online, and I had a really good group of people, had like 150 people in our Facebook group and doing workouts, and it was really great. But then my husband came back, and then we were readjusting to life with him in our life, and he had barely known his daughter, and there's reintegration, and there's just all this stuff to when the love of your life is out of your life for a year and you have children and you bring them back and you kind of go from there. So life happened, and there was a lot of ups and downs with that. And when he came back, that's when we started this podcast, and we started it together. But then he had to get back to work after all of his leave, and life got crazy. So he stopped for a little bit, and then I started doing it by myself, and then we felt called to move. So in 2023, we moved from New Mexico to Texas, and now we're in Texas. And I stopped kind of coaching in the middle of that move, obviously, and stopped doing this podcast and all of that stuff. And I've just been really on and off ever since moving here, and I've really struggled with being a wife and a mother and I homeschool our son, and I believe in that, and I believe I'm called to do that, and I want to do that. But it's a lot when you also feel called to do something else, and you feel like you have purpose outside of a wife and a mother. And so recently I had a long talk with my husband about what it is I feel God has called me to do, because you only get one life. And I feel like he's given me life experience and things to relate to people and to help people and to care for people. And I just don't share it. I just feel like I've buried it, which is not what we're called to do. So he told me, he said, I think you need to start your podcast again, and I think you need to continue coaching people online. And we just had this big talk, and that's the direction we're going, and that's why I'm doing this again. And I also forgot to share this, but I did end up having a background in healthcare. I went the route of getting my advanced EMT. I got my EMT basic, and then in New Mexico we had a program for advanced EMT and then paramedic. And I didn't get paramedic, which I'm really bummed about, but while I owned the gym, I also worked as an AEMT in an emergency room for 3 years, and that gave me so much life experience and insight into true health and fitness and what that means and what that actually looks like. So I also want to bring that to the table. But back to what I was saying. Sorry, that was a side note, and I didn't want to forget it. And I have notes, and I forgot to look at my notes. So excuse me for that. But the main reason that I want to do this podcast / YouTube channel is, the purpose of it is to help people improve their lives mentally, physically, and emotionally, and just be real. Like, we live in a world where social media is a 30-second to a minute and a half dopamine hit per reel, or 10 seconds per picture, and you move on to the next one, and you see motivational things, and you see real life things. And all I can think about most of the time, because I'm guilty of this, I used to do it, is like, do they really set up their camera for that? Like, are they really filming that? And I understand they're trying to share, and I understand they're trying to be real, but in my mind, I'm like, that's not real. Real life is real connection. But what I want to use this channel for is to educate and to share my experience or experiences in hopes that it can help you improve your life mentally, physically, or emotionally. And use it as a means of connection. Even though it is through social media, I feel like it's a way to potentially connect in person and build real relationships with real people. So that is my background. That is me. I know that's kind of a lot, but I don't want to take up all your time. But the things that you can look forward to seeing is, I have it written down, but we're going to talk about mental health. That's going to be a really big one because I don't think you can be physically fit without having good mental health. And a caveat that, because that's a whole nother subject, but I mean true health, not just aesthetics or anything like that. So that we're going to talk about mental health on here. We're going to talk about fitness and actual education in fitness and nutrition. And then I want to share some real life things with you and take you with me to go do things and how those apply to fitness emotionally and physically and mentally. And then like I said, I want to share my personal stories and the lessons that I've learned in hopes that maybe you don't feel alone or that you can relate and just know that I'm here for you. So I just want to say that I'm grateful for you guys. I appreciate every single one of you. If you haven't already, please click the subscribe button. It does help so much. So please like, please subscribe, and take it one day at a time. We'll see you in the next one. Also guys, I forgot to mention that I am coaching people online. So it is a group, it is a community, it's called DRVN Fitness, and you get one-on-one nutrition coaching. There are 3 workout tracks, and it's all for only $5 a month. Yeah, just $5 a month, because I don't think good fitness should be expensive. I think it should be accessible to anybody to make their lives better. So if that's something you're interested in, please click the link below in the description, and we can get you started and get you rolling. Bye guys.